Let me call the meeting to order, the Board of Directors meeting Thursday, June 26th, 2025. Item B, establish a quorum.
Director Cotton,
Here.
Director Covington, here, Vice President Bella,
Here.
President Wheeler,
Here.
we have a quorum.
Thank you. And the Pledge of Allegiance. Aaron, would you like to lead us this first? Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Public comments, have we received anything?
No.
Alice?
No comment.
Carried. Agenda review. Additions, deletions, anything on the consent calendar you want to pull or for later discussion? Okay. Then we have no acknowledgements or presentations. So we can go on to the consent calendar. Any questions on any items in there?
I think we have probably just a little typo. On line 86,
Of the minutes.
yeah,
86.
I think it should be presented, right?
Yes.
Okay,
That's it.
then. I have a motion to accept the consent calendar.
No move. A second.
Thank you.
Was that Director Cotton that?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Cotton,
Yes.
Vice President Bella,
Yes.
Director Covington. Yes. President Wheeler.
Yes. Moving on to item 6, hearings and appeals. Public hearing regarding employee vacancies.
So the way that, would it be helpful if I described the way you typically do, public hearing? Yes. Yep.
Sure.
Okay. So you open the hearing and then have the staff presentation, take any public comments and then close the hearing, and then we'll have a discussion if there's any more discussion after that.
Okay. Then I will open the public hearing. Who on the staff is
Presentation by the staff.
make the presentation? Allison. Thank you.
So from last board meeting, I introduced that Assembly Bill 2561 was put into place this year, regarding, kind of amends the Miles-Brown Act in regards to the vacancies so that we're more transparent in what, public entities are, reporting out. So what we are required to do is we're required to track vacancy rates in our bargaining units, present the status of vacancies annually before budget adoption, identify barriers in recruitment and selection process, and allow employee organizations to present, if desired, and additional reporting requirements if our vacancy rates exceed 20%. We are fortunate that ours do not. So our employee association also declined to present tonight. So I thought I would just take this opportunity, since we don't have any current vacancies, to just kind of give a little bit of a historical view on past vacancies that we've had. So I went back into our budgets from 2020 all the way until 2024. As you can kind of see, we've had no vacancies within our exempt employees. But typically you'll see nothing higher than 3 vacancies at a time within our non-exempt employees. I took an example from a recent recruitment from 2023, which is our water systems operator. And this is typically how a recruitment from start to finish happens. So a position was vacated January 31st, 2023. You can see that it was posted, and I want to make it clear that it was posted on our website and only our website on July 24th, 2023. And it was posted, there for quite some time, only there. And it wasn't until August 1st, that an application was actually received. So there was a lag of time, between the position being vacated from January 31st to an application being received, because it wasn't until they pushed it out into online platforms outside of the website that actually people saw the position. So unless people weren't directed to our website, they didn't know that we had vacancies.
And there was a delay because we were contemplating the 4-day work week, so we waited to do the big push until after the 4-day work week was adopted, so that there was certainty in that.
Correct. So then you can see here that it was kind of a little bit fast, so application received August 1st, interview 22nd, offer letter 24th, and then the start date was October 2nd. So what did we learn from this? So current strategies that we have to attract and retain employees. So we regularly review our compensation benefits and to assure regional competitiveness. So obviously we constantly look at our surrounding neighbors to make sure that we're kind of keeping up with the status of benefits and what other agencies are doing, as well as what their salary schedules look like compared to ours. We definitely support employee growth through professional development and training and conferences for all staff. That's kind of new this year, where we're sending a lot more of our staff, not just management, to conferences and to trainings. We foster a positive workplace culture through employee engagement efforts. We maintain strong candidate pools and conduct targeted outreach, so colleges, associations, things like that. And we have made improvements to our hiring and onboarding process. So we've streamlined application and interview procedures to reduce time to hire. So instead of paper applications that we historically have done, we now have online applications that candidates can fill out. Our pre-boarding workflows to speed onboarding the system access. So we have now our ADP onboarding, which is all digital, it's all online. So there's no more paperwork that needs to be filled out for our employees. We've improved job advertisements by using clearer, more engaging postings, including expansion of job boards and an improvement brochure. As you can see from the operations manager, we created our own brochure. We pushed that out to emails and to groups of, HR professionals that we had, public works professionals that we knew. So we expanded, not just posting it on platforms like LinkedIn and other platforms like that. We updated job description to better reflect current roles and responsibilities, and implementation of a new 90-day check-in with the administrative services manager. What that's going to look like is that for every new employee that comes on board, after 90 days, they'll be able to just kind of meet with me. I just want to be able to gauge where they're at, seeing if there's anything that we can do as a district to better support them. Maybe they might need better understanding of the records retention policy. Maybe they want better understanding of how to use the server, things like that. So something that they might have missed when they kind of came on board, they'll be able to just kind of, ask me and see where they can kind of gauge from there. Go back one. There we go. All right, we have prospective vacancies. We have a water systems operator who is expected to retire June 27th, 2025. That's tomorrow. Administrative specialist expected to retire July 31st. And our operations manager, which is Brenna, is October 2025. So those are our prospective vacancies. So we will obviously have them filled. Our operations manager and our administrative specialist are actually on the road to being filled, and our water systems operator will be advertised within the next couple of months. And then now is when we have public comment. I have not received any public comments, and there is nobody here. But if you all have any questions or comments, I would love to answer them for you.
Then we can close the public hearing, open it up to,
We don't have anybody on.
No, there's nobody.
open it up to board members' questions or.
So we are using our own website now, we're posting jobs on.
Yeah,
on
so
the
we
web.
post our jobs on our website. We also post the job application on our website as well. And so then every time I post onto an online platform, they're directed to our website.
I understand the specialist we received a ton of applications.
hundred and 38 applications within 6 days.
I'm glad I didn't have to read them.
Yeah, it took us a while, for sure.
Are we going to have a period when the two positions are gonna be overlapping?
Yes, that starts on Monday.
The admin specialist has been hired and will start Monday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's about a month overlap.
And who's gonna be doing the systems operator's job? Because you haven't advertised that and he's leaving tomorrow, right?
No, it's been advertised and, we received a signed offer letter today.
Oh,
The
So,
operations
no,
manager.
oh, operations manager?
He,
Yeah.
he asked about the water.
Oh, the water operator, sorry.
Systems operator.
No, that one,
The-
that
the-
one.
The person was leaving, that guy is leaving tomorrow.
Yeah, that one, we're gonna,
We've got several water system operators, Lewis, so they'll shadow one of their, they work with Michael, right? For guys out in the field, so they'll just be assigned to work with somebody
Yeah.
that's already a water system operator, shadow them.
Okay.
yeah, and over the last, several weeks, the retiring operator has worked with another one to kind of, to share,
Right,
introduced him to a bunch of vendors and, all the information that he kind of managed. So, yeah, that transition happened in the last 3 weeks or so.
All right, good. Good. And everybody is happy with the new people coming in?
We haven't
we
seen.
haven't met them
I
yet.
don't know. You interviewed them, right?
Yes,
There you go, so.
Yeah, no, we're excited. Change is hard, but we're excited.
So when you interview them, though, you're FaceTiming them, right?
we are in person,
Yeah,
yes.
or in person?
Yes.
Ah, okay, so you know who they are. So
Very
you have an
much,
opinion about them already.
Oh, yeah.
I hope
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't be joining the team if it wasn't very good.
All right. Very good, hopefully they will work out as good or better than the ones we had before. Irreplaceable, right now. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the cycle of life of an organization, you know.
That's right.
People come, people go,
Mhm.
and hopefully whoever comes in will work for the betterment of the organization.
So there's nothing we have to do with this, there's no,
Well,
it's just only a hearing.
correct, yeah.
And
I'm getting the report.
yeah, this public, this public hearing is now because of a new,
Wow.
yeah.
So this will happen annually.
Because I mean, you know, I was involved in hiring many people who've never done this before.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Brand new.
You know,
Yeah, it has to be done annually before the budget is adopted.
and if you don't have any vacancies, you do it anyway, and if you don't have any vacancies at this point. Okay, so we started off good with 3 vacancies.
We had none, now we have some, but
Yeah, good, good.
pretty close.
All right, good. So now,
Okay.
And you'll see on the agenda that you received at home, there's an item under 7, but we actually removed that. That was an error.
okay.
So there's nothing under 7. Just to verify what you gotta do.
If you don't mind, I just want to make a comment. I know we passed on number 5 already, but when we put these reports, because that's why I missed it now, and I had something to say. Like 5C, I just wrote it now, you know, like this says agenda item 5D, this one had nothing on it. So as I'm flipping, I just missed it, you know. And the reason that I wanted to say something, there is a little typo, number 1, on the reso. Towards the bottom, it says California. It should be per capita, not per capital. Per capita, personal income. Did you guys find that? On the reso itself? It's like 1, 2, 3, 4 lines from the bottom.
I see it.
And I had a question on this number down here. Where I circled. How would this arrive at?
That's a James calculation.
Which page number is this?
This is, where it says notice of determination, this is your item, 5C, Jim. And, It said the appropriation limit is 4583,681.
Yes,
Okay, because I would have assumed that that's 4303340 multiplied by 1.0651, right?
correct.
Okay? But when we do that, it doesn't come out to that. Unless my math is fuzzy.
Let me pull up that worksheet.
So. 4,3,3,4 multiplied by 1.651. The last partition will be 487, not 681.
Oh, so rounding, so there's more significant digits that didn't appear on there. So that sounds like it would just be more of a rounding error since once you get up to those.
No, it doesn't look like rounding, because they're off, like three numbers, not by much, but they're off by, I don't know, a couple $100. But it's not, it doesn't compute.
Well, the
Well,
question would be whether or not the 6.44 actually have more digits associated with it.
Yeah,
No, it's not the 644, it's this one, the
Oh.
1.0651.
so the 10651 would have more significant digits because you multiply the other two percentages together and it's opening up right now.
Okay,
Um,
and it comes up to $200?
Thereabouts,
Okay.
so. So if I were to.
Because you have, 4 digits, 4 decimal digits, but that's pretty accurate,
Yeah,
But you're reading it at 7 digits, so in the actual.
Yeah,
number
so-
You're disputing.
the full number is 106514508 is the percentage that the formula uses.
Okay,
Which that equates to that 681, so.
okay. All right. Oh, yeah, because I was looking at that. I was eyeballing it, I was like, how did? Okay, so there were other figures that don't show here. All right.
Yeah.
Fine, be that. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I apologize, I
No problem.
wanted to go back a little bit, But yeah, Kat, if you could please put.
Yeah,
That's,
I'll-
that corresponds to the agenda.
Yeah.
All right, thank
Try
you.
to, but occasionally miss some.
Okay, moving on to section 8A. Which also not legal, but.
It's a result, yeah.
This one is King's resolution 202519 or
Yeah.
for the operating and capital budget.
Yep, so this has been brought to the finance committee back in April, and then it was brought to the board again in the end of April and then again in May. For your review and input. So tonight is the official approving of the budget as well as that down limit, which we just finished up with. So, excuse me. Total revenues that we are proposing to adopt is 21,174,600, of which 20,450,600 it goes to operating reserve and 724 goes to the COP account. So we do have a budget amount for interest earnings on the COP account that's going to go into that reserve. Total budgeted expenditures, these are operating expenditures, is 18,581,978. That includes salaries and benefits, includes supplies, operations and maintenance, all those items. So those are total operating expenditures, and then we have capital projects of $6,908,805 that is going to be paid out of PAYGO. And an additional $13,795,000 paid from the COP. When you evaluate the operating reserves, you'll see that we will have a total resources, projected resources to, available for the reserves of 469,000. Of that, we're projecting, based on the operating expenditures, 50% of that goes to the operating reserve. Because our current reserve policy says that we've got, that we want to have at least 50% in the reserves. So that leaves about $8.2 million going to capital reserves. So then that flushes down to the capital reserves piece, but of that, we are expecting to spend 6.9 of that. So, which would leave us about $1.2 million to fund that particular capital reserve. Our current policy says we have a target of $8 million for that, for the capital reserve. So we do have a projected shortfall in that reserve of 6.8. That doesn't mean it's not funded. We still have $1.3 million in that reserve is what we're projecting at the end of next year based on this budget. For the COPs, there's available resources of about $32,610,000. Expecting to spend about $14 million, leaving us a total remaining available resources as of the end of next year of $19.5 million. In the most significant changes related to, as compared to the current year budget, the fiscal year 25 budget, relates to commodity charges as well as the fixed system charges. $1.9 million in the commodity charges and $781,000 increase in fixed system charges. The other significant increase in revenues includes interest revenue because of that COP funding, because we're gonna have some significant earnings based on those COP funds. The expenditures increase is the biggest increase, of course, relates to debt service because we do have a full year's worth of debt service on the 2025 bonds. So that increased the debt service expenditures of about $1.5 million. Water purchase services went up about $573,000, and then maintenance repairs is the next significant increase of only $72,000. In the capital budget, we noted that there's $250,000 for capital related items. And that's for capital assets such as vehicles, fixed assets essentially that the district is going to be utilizing. $6.7 million increase in PAYGO capital projects, and then of course, $13.8 million in debt financing because we didn't have anything last year. So in the packet, of course, you've got the full budget package, which is cover page, transmittal letter, description. You'll notice if you compare to the current year budget, we've expanded some of the descriptions within the budget packet. One thing that we wanted to highlight was that we're also disclosing within the budget packet the projected debt service ratios. So since we've got that new funding, we want to make sure that we're tracking that on a monthly basis, as well as when we're developing the budget that we're not going to drop below that. So we need to continuously monitor that. And you'll see that the ratio is projected to be 1.94. So 1.9 times the debt service that we and our rate covenant is 1.3. And at this point, because we've gone over some of the details in previous meetings, I will go ahead and open it up to questions.
Were there any changes from the last time we looked at this from
There were two. There was one for $12,000 for building maintenance costs, basically cleaning, vacuuming no, not here at
Dairy Lane.
Dairy Lane, thank you. And then the other one relates to.
wait. That was gonna be budgeted for next year?
Yeah, so, yeah, we didn't have an amount budgeted for the current year. And then we got a quote recently for Dairy Lane to do cleaning services over there.
So we used to have cleaning services at Dairy Lane until the
The
flood,
janitorial service.
janitorial services, and then we stopped. And, you know, our staff has been doing it and we said, hey, wait, this is ridiculous. We should bring back janitorial services. So it hadn't been budgeted because we hadn't been spending it, having our folks do it, but there's no reason our folks should be cleaning the toilets. So that's why I got added.
So will that stop during the construction process there?
Yes.
Well, the offices were not being used as much, just mostly
Yeah, there's no
the
restrooms
warehouse and all
over
that,
there.
and then the restroom, obviously, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is
Trash.
basically to clean hygiene the restrooms, right?
Yeah.
72,000.
No, 12,000.
12,000.
Oh,
That's
so what was the
72,000.
72,000 for?
The 72,000 was the third largest increase in expenditure as compared to the fiscal year 25 budget.
Okay, so we're talking about $1,000 a month, right? Basically. for these
Basically,
guys.
yes.
Okay.
And then the other
A
change.
lot of cleaning.
Those guys are burning over there. And then the other change since the last meeting was, professional services went up $9,500, for the John Davidson contract.
Okay, yeah,
So-
yeah, I saw that, yeah. On that, if I may, there was copying. He doesn't do all our copying, all right?
So he doesn't himself do it, but he acts as a print broker to these various print houses he has a relationship with. So there's a lot of coordination to get stuff right, especially when you get the complicated brochures with the inserts and not.
Yeah.
So he does that arranging for it. And so he does the payment, and so we pay him for those services.
But any digital work that he does for us that need to be printed,
Mhm.
it comes from that budget.
Yes.
Okay, I thought it would be more than that, so. That's good, still bad.
Yeah.
I was curious why he doesn't have, and maybe I just couldn't find it, but there doesn't seem to be any website for him. Is he just,
He only has a handful of clients.
okay,
He actually kind of took over the business from his aunt. He started working with his aunt and his aunt passed away. He had an original background in, like magazine journalism
okay.
and production.
I-
So
it
yes.
just, I mean, I know you guys have used him for a while, so I assumed he's trustworthy and
Yeah.
responsible, but it's like just the name kind of jumped out at me and I thought, oh, where is
Yeah.
this guy? Who is this guy? No website.
He's-
I found his house. Well, I found his house is his business. And so I'm like,
Will you stop for him or?
I told him I do this for a living. And it's like, I want to know where this business is.
He's been with
It's
us
a neighborhood in St. George,
For a
Utah.
number of years,
Yeah.
he's been with us for about at least 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Longer
sounds
than that.
right.
Kenny brought him over
So-
from Cambria.
Yeah, Tammy
Yeah,
worked with
yeah.
him at Cambria and actually worked with his aunt at Cambria before she
Okay.
joined the district.
So he's been like
And
vetted.
He
trusted.
But he
also
lives up
does
north,
work for
right?
Persimmon Hills Water
St. George,
District and
Utah.
and
Westboro.
North Coast
And
County
Westboro.
Water District in Westboro. So several water districts around here.
Use him.
Tammy had a relationship with him, knew him, he does great work, and then other agencies around here also started working with him,
Okay,
so
okay.
he has, yeah, a handful of clients.
Yeah, it just looked odd to me when I started just kind of digging in, because somebody that does website design, I'm like, where's your website? And it doesn't exist, and so as a matter of fact, it was really pissing me off, because I kept going in, and the closest thing I could find would just feed me ads. And again, there's another red flag when you're hunting people, it's like, this is not normal, but looking at the legacy he's had here, I thought, this has to have been
Yeah, no,
vetted.
he's one person and he doesn't, he's got stable clients, so he's not out
Okay.
looking for a bunch of clients.
But actually, Chuck, FYI, once a year, he does come here and gives us a presentation.
Okay, so you're a real person.
He does. Yeah, he does. He is.
And it should
yeah.
be the July meeting, we're planning on it,
Yeah, usually when we accept his proposal, he does like a 1-year presentation to us in person.
Okay, great, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And the stuff you order from India on those spam, will be delivered to your
It's
house.
coming
so
soon,
please
I'm
come
sure.
Through
Yeah, it
St.
was
George,
really
Utah.
bizarre stuff, and so, again, I was just like, oh, red flags all over here, but. Moving on.
I guess thinking about it, since it came up, since he's a one-man shop, do we have any sort of backup as far as if he's not available or has a serious illness or anything like that?
That's a good question.
as far as the website, we have access, we can
We can find somebody
can-
else to change it. yeah.
We,
We
we
can go-
ourselves, yeah.
Allison often does the
Yeah,
updates, I've done some
admin-
updates.
admin rights.
We have, we all do. As far as who's gonna produce the brochures, I mean, we can figure it out, but.
Yeah.
Um,
But at least we have all of the materials
Yeah.
available, the,
and
how to get to
Exactly.
Joan and so
Yeah.
on, so that
He
we can find
usually-
someone who has those capabilities.
he usually interfaces with
That's fine.
Liftoff, our website, actual post manager, but I also have contacts with them and stuff, so we,
Mhm.
we have the ability.
Okay. Any other questions, Gwen? Sure. Okay. Then.
That's it for James.
No, we have to have a resolution.
No more
here.
beating him up. Yeah, let him
Well,
stop.
one more time, James, just for those that are new here, this shortfall, how do we make up this shortfall?
So it's just, addition, I mean, that's part of the rate study is to help fund that over the course of 5 years.
Okay.
So, and then it's just a matter of the capital planning program, like how much in capital expenditures are you planning on spending? Do you not spend on capital until you increase that capital reserve? That's not necessarily prudent, so. It's just, this is a benchmark to kind of figure out where you're at and what your future needs are. To make sure that you're tracking correctly.
No, the ratios look good and the coverage, I understand it's covenants and stuff, so that made total sense, but I just didn't know how this gets lined.
Yeah, when we went back to the rate study process, these are charts that the board, existing board members stared at quite a bit. But we modeled that, yes, our reserves would drop to what, we consider to be an acceptable limit before they start climbing again and that was just part of the whole study. So now we're just monitoring that that's doing what we planned it to do, and we're not dropping too
We
low.
track it during the year and you'll see at the end of the year that there's this little float in there that either is going into capital or it's coming out of capital to balance the budget to a zero at the end of the year.
Okay. Good to know.
And it's usually what, a few $1,000s or something.
Yeah, I mean, I present the reserve analysis during my treasurer's report every month anyways, so you can track month to month. I can start reporting on what the differences are from month to month if you want, as part of that report, but.
No. We'll see it as we go through, that there's always that number of this is the leftover
Yeah.
from the discrepancy between the actuals and the budget type of thing.
James, I think I asked this question before, and as far as the projections on the expenditures, there's always a little cushion there for.
In the areas that we felt that we needed it, yes, we remain more conservative. So, one of the hallmarks of this budget is it doesn't budget on one-time revenues. It's not based on one-time revenues. So we balance the budget on actual projected inflows.
You're correct.
And then the expenditures, we
Expenditures.
tend to overestimate the expenditures rather than underestimate, just to be on the more conservative side.
Absolutely, yeah, good.
And those one-time income can be, those are developer fees, right? So
For the most part, yeah.
Those can be,
Yeah.
good size. So,
Yeah,
They could be over $1 million.
Yeah,
Correct.
so like this last year, we had 807,000 in those fees and the capacity charges that,
mhm,
yeah, but we don't balance our budget based on that. So
good,
that's not a good financial practice,
good.
financial management.
Yeah,
practice.
because, those may or may not materialize,
Well, you have one here, item 8D, right? There's a connection fee
Yeah.
for development.
Yes, yeah, so that, yeah.
Couple $100,000.
Yeah.
So we're already ahead on our budget.
Yeah, we only budgeted, what, 40,000 or something for the
We
year?
didn't.
No, so that
Actually,
was,
this
so
year-
last year, we started the budget off with 40,000 and nothing materialized for a long time, then we dropped it, and then all of a sudden we got this check. For lack of a better word, and so we bumped it back up, so.
Christmas.
Right. Okay, can I have a motion on this resolution?
So moved?
Second,
Thank you.
Director Cotton,
Yes.
Director Covington? Yes. Vice President Bella,
Yes,
President Wheeler?
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to item 8B. We have two resolutions. And a large stack of paper. You wanna start, Kathy?
Yeah, I'll give a little intro here. So, this is the fun one for tonight. This is the one I sent out a couple weeks early to give you extra time. So I'll let, Drew give the presentation. You know, I asked him to kind of keep it relatively high level if, because this is all so complicated and so detailed, we could spend hours if we wanted to. So we're relying on you to ask questions. If there's anything that doesn't make sense, we can go deeper for sure. And actually, I saw Danielle, McPherson from Bosca join, so, I assume that means she's here for questions, if there's anything she can help with as well. But after years of negotiation, working through this, we'll let Drew take the fun and give the presentation. So,
Yeah, we can just go down to the slides there. Yeah, so basically this is revolve around the water supply agreement that we have with SFPC. You go to the next slide. Basically, we're gonna give a very broad overview of what the water supply agreement is and what the amendments to that water supply agreement are. Basically, both resolutions are about amending the water supply agreement for specific aspects of it. So as a broad picture, the WSA has basically three key elements to it. One of which is that it governs the water supply that SPC provides to wholesale customers, the 26 agencies that purchase water from SFPC. It defines that allocation of cost between San Francisco and those wholesale customers from purchasing water. And it includes some minimum purchase quantity requirements for several agencies who receive water from other sources. We'll get into that later in the presentation. That's one of the items that will be amended as part of these resolutions. The third chunk is basically revolving around drought allocations. So there's a tier 1 and tier 2 plan that provides a methodology for allocating water to both San Francisco and the wholesale customers during the drought. Yeah, next slide. So the amendments to the WSA revolve around basically three sections. There's the updated tier 2 plan, which revolves around drought allocations for the wholesale customers. There's the minimum purchase amendments that I mentioned, which we'll be getting into later, and then the tier 1 plan amendments, which is how water is divvied up between San Francisco and wholesale customers. So we'll start with the tier 2 plan. Actually, we'll kind of give a broad overview of the tier 1, tier 2 plan. So this is basically, as I mentioned, how water is allocated to both San Francisco and wholesale customers during a drought. So, you know, say for instance, San Francisco declares a drought for the upcoming year. Essentially, the tier 1 plan allocates the water between San Francisco and the wholesale customers collectively. So that's about SFPC and the all 26 agencies. The tier 2 plan is how all the 26 different agencies allocate water amongst themselves. So it's basically tier 1 involves San Francisco and us. Tier 2 is just the collective agencies and how they basically allocate that drought supply water. Yeah, you can go ahead. So talking about the tier 2 plan first, right? Just the wholesale customer section of it. The existing plan was actually adopted back in 2011, but has the only time it's been implemented was in 2021 during the most recent drought that we experienced. When that plan was implemented, a lot of issues kind of arose as we saw it in practice. There were issues with existing model, the Excel-based model that was used to allocate that water amongst the different agencies. Just some wonky things happening there and things that just did not make sense. But also there's just been updates to conditions with, you know, water demand for these different agencies. And yeah, just overall water use habits and patterns have changed since the plan was most recently changed and implemented. So basically, yeah, you can go ahead. Because of those realizations after it's implemented, the Bosque agencies realized this plan needs to be updated and amended. So basically, the last 2.5 years, there have been some pretty exhaustive and intense negotiations occurring amongst those 26 FOSCA agencies to revise and figure out a way to update that plan and the methodology for how water is divvied up. I was not involved in those negotiations, but I know Cat was, and it was a pretty intensive process. I mean, there was monthly meetings for over 2.5 years that were either sometimes half day or even full day meetings to figure out and negotiate this process of how to update this model and more equitably divvy up the water.
True, so, but the MGD did not change, right? It stayed the same for both the tiers.
Right, well, do you mean like our ISG or?
No,
like
from
our-
SFPC.
So that depends on in a drought, how much water is available for the system. So the total pie can change size depending on how severe the drought and the conditions at the time. And then the method for figuring out how much water goes to tier 1, which is the breakdown between SFPC and all of the Gulf Coast.
Correct.
That method hasn't changed. So it's just that last step of, okay, here's all the water that wholesale agencies collectively get. How does that get broken out and distributed? us?
Between the wholesale agency, all right, okay, good.
Right, but the total bucket of water, the method to calculate that remains the same. That's
Exactly.
immediate.
Exactly, all right, good.
Okay, yeah, and as part of the negotiation, there were, I think, 4 policy principles that were developed. On the next slide. Which is basically, number 1, to provide sufficient water for the basic health and safety needs of customers. To minimize economic and other adverse impacts of water shortages on customers and the Bosque region. To provide predictability of allocations through consistent predetermined rules for calculation, while allowing for flexibility to respond to unforeseen circumstances. And to recognize benefits of and avoid disincentives for water use efficiency and developing alternative water supply projects. So those are the 4 main principles that came out of the negotiations. This is just a very broad overview of the methodology used in the updated tier 2 plan to allocate water. Just to kind of very briefly go over it. Initial step is to establish minimum, maximum allocations for all agencies. We then go through a residential allocation, a non-residential base allocation, a seasonal allocation based off of time of year, summer and winter use patterns. And factors in the total water use and each agency's ISG. So they're basically supply guarantee from San Francisco. So all of these elements go through, the process one by one to basically come out with a total allocation for each agency at the end of that process. So it's a way of just balancing each agency's, specific and individual uses or needs, as well as their guarantee from San Francisco. So this graph here is basically showing a comparison of allocation in a hypothetical drought scenario between the existing tier 1 plan and the amended and proposed update to the tier 2 plan. So this is basically assuming a 15% cutback from a drought scenario. And as you can see, there's basically a general evening out of the allocation amongst agencies. Some that pop out in San Jose was facing huge cutbacks relative to what the updated plan shows. And yeah, basically just showing like how this updated plan sort of evens out and smooths out the allocation for each of the agencies. Also, this is just one specific scenario. I think during the negotiations, many different scenarios were explored and looked at, even up to scenarios through 2040, what those allocations might look like, different cutback scenarios and all that, just to basically see what effects that plan is having, the model and methodologies is what kind of effect that's having on the supplies and the allocations. And yeah, basically went through a very iterative process of looking at multiple different scenarios to see how it impacted each agency.
Yeah,
Sure.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Is that a question on the needs-based steps and the allocation methodology? Is that going to be based on like agreed upon formula or method for calculating that each agency will use, or is it more subjective than that?
Yeah, so there's basically an Excel worksheet that's been developed that is used to calculate each agency's allocation. And so we all have the same exact model, and it's being used in the same way to develop those
And-
numbers, basically.
And Bosco will be the one that actually administers and runs the model. The data inputs are all, that was part of the negotiation. What are we gonna use for data? It's all standardized. What if there's a variance between someone saying, right, the population right now is, but what they've reported the population in other documents? No, you can't game the system, right? There's all these checks and balances. This is why it gets very involved, keeping it high level. Because, you know, as Drew mentioned, there were scenarios, and this is just one snapshot, one example, but we looked at smaller droughts, bigger droughts. Current conditions, later conditions, there's so many factors, like how much, you know, growth and development you have in your area. How much growth and development happens in the other 25 agencies, right? So, all I can say is everyone's equally unhappy with how it turned out, which is, I guess, a good negotiation process, but,
Yeah.
it's good for the system.
So yeah, just kind of a summary negotiation or the adoption process, you know, to finalize the tier 2 plan, each of the 26 member agencies need to adopt to adopt the plan. And it has to be adopted unanimously. If agreement cannot be reached by all 26 agencies, it then goes to the Bosco Board of Directors at the end of the year by December 2025. And if the board cannot vote on or agree to adoption, it then gets pushed to SFPC to basically determine how water is allocated to all the agencies during a drought. I mean, that's basically like the worst case scenario because we essentially at that point have no control over how much water we get or what methodologies use to divvy up that water. So it's definitely within all of our best interest to you know agree on the process that we've all negotiated with rather than having it go to SFPC and have them decide for us. Okay, so that's long and short of the tier 2 plan update.
It's interesting, Drew, that most of the agencies, the difference between the existing tier 2 and the updated tier 2 is not that much, you know, except for a few of them, which is drastic, you know, it's just like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't speak specifically to why those agencies in particular had such a big change. Just.
And this is for cutback, we're talking about.
Yeah, right. But they were, I mean, it's like 35% cutback and that is huge, so it's.
Well,
Makes sense.
And some of that is the kind of guideposts on either end of the minimum allocation and max, or like a minimum cutback and a maximum cutback. Which, you know, depending on the situation in the future, we may similarly benefit from, so. Yeah,
Yeah, we may.
some agencies benefit now, we could benefit in the future, so.
In the past, how big of a cutback have we, as a water agency, successfully implemented?
Back in 2015, 2016, when I got here, we're in the midst of a drought and our customers, we reduced our water use by, I want to say it was like 28%.
Over 20%.
Yeah,
Yeah, it has been pretty impressive
yeah,
conservation efforts.
yeah.
We slivered on that though, since then, right?
Oh, and we're going up. Yeah, you'll see, you know, later on when I talk about, you know, our water throughout the entire system has gone up. Okay.
That was also related back to 2013 as the base case. Whereas now we're going to adjust the past 3 years
Mhm.
of water use. So it's sort of a sliding scale that's
Right.
going forward.
Yeah, it's relative
Rather
to
than
recent water use, non-drought water
Right.
use, yeah. So,
Because if you look at our water conservation numbers over the past 20 years, there's been big reduction in
Yeah,
our
yeah.
use,
mhm.
a lot more than some of the other agencies, which are right up near their ISG.
So shifting to the tier 1 plan, so again, this is how water is during a drought is allocated between San Francisco and the collective 26 postal customers. The main update here in the WSA agreement amendment is what we're calling the excess use charge family plan. So basically, under existing, how it's written now, if during a drought, any agency uses over their allocations, over their allotted drought water use, they are charged an excess use fee, basically saying you're only allowed this much, you used the X much over, so you have to pay an additional charge for that water. The change in the amendment is basically to use what we're referring to as a family plan, which is to look at collectively all 26 agencies and determine if we have collectively gone over the drought allocation. So rather than looking at each specific agency, we look at all of us collectively and determine then whether or not we're over or under our allocation. So just looking at that chart there as an example, we look at agency B and D, they're using above what their allocation is. But if we look at the total use, we're under the allocation, so no excess use charge is gonna be applied to anybody. If that total, I would say, was flipped and our total usage is over the allotment, then only those specific agencies who are using over their allocation are charged that excess use. So it's basically a way of looking at it collectively, which makes sense because the allocations are looked at collectively under the tier 2 plan, and tier 1 plan. So it just makes sense to look at the excess charges collectively as well. So that's the major update to the tier 1 plan. I think you'll see it attached by the red lines. There's some minor wording updates and things to that section, but that's the main one for the tier 1.
And that was a really big win for us, as agencies. San Francisco doesn't like to give up methods for collecting revenue, so they essentially lost the chance at some revenue. In a drought where we don't collectively go over, but some agencies do.
What did we trade to give them that or nothing?
Nothing on this, no, this was a very good win. I think Steve Ritchie got a puppy. When it's happened, when this was agreed to.
Okay, next slide.
Very sweet dog.
Yeah. Are you serious?
I met him. Yeah. He brought a dog.
So the third major update to the water supply agreement is what I hinted at before, the minimum purchase quantity requirement. So basically there are four Bosque agencies receive imported water from sources other than the SFPUC. And the purpose of the MPQ is to basically set a minimum amount that each of those four agencies have to purchase from San Francisco. It's basically a way of stabilizing their revenue and basically ensuring that they will receive a certain amount of money from those four agencies to know basically for planning purposes or to basically stabilize their revenue. So Sunnyvale wanted to purchase 0 gallons from SFPC 1 year and then all of their water the next year because the rates were better, and that basically prevents that from happening. And it also benefits the Bosque member agencies to know what those rates are going to be from SFPC in any given year, that sort of thing. So in practice, idea makes sense, but in practice, what we've seen is one that a lot of these agencies' demands are much lower than what the MPQ was set at back in 2009. So they're basically in situations where they just simply don't have enough demand to meet that minimum purchase quantity. So we're having to pay basically a fee for not meeting that quantity of water every year, even though they don't have enough demand. So it basically, because of continued conservation efforts and also, trying to develop alternative supplies, they just simply aren't able to meet that minimum purchase quality. And so they're paying for water that they effectively aren't using. I know some agencies have, in the past, a number of years been paying upwards of $4 million a year in water that they just aren't getting because they simply don't have the demands to meet that quantity. Another understanding unintended consequence of this is that that money that they're paying for nothing basically could be going into developing alternative water supplies like recycled water or other things that are, kind of drought resilient supplies that they just aren't able to because they, are having to pay this kind of ghost fee, so to speak. So next slide, basically the amendment would basically adjust this MPQ to one, reset that number, that minimum purchase quantity to 80% of actual use during the last 4 non-drought years. So basically looking at, more realistic demands for each of these systems and setting that minimum purchase amount there rather than something based in 2009 that they, may not ever reach again, or maybe not for a long time. The second adjustment is to have a 1-year drought rebound minimum purchase quantity. Basically, what we understand is that after droughts, there's a gradual rebound in demand following drought cutbacks and conservation. And so basically this would reset their NPQ to halfway between the original and their drought use to basically make it more equitable, because we know that their 1-year post-drought use is going to be a lot lower than it would be normally. And the third component is basically the collective purchase family plan. Essentially, if all 4 agencies meet their NPQ, then no penalties are met, similar to the tier 1 family plan. So basically, if Sunnyvale doesn't meet theirs, but the other 3 do, and the total is above the NPQ, then no fees are incurred. If the collective 4 agencies do not meet their NPQ, then the penalty would be imposed on all agencies. So next slide. So this is basically just a broader view of what the impacts of these adjustments to the NPQ would be. Ranging from percentage of a cent to about 4 cents per unit of water for each of the agencies, if that NPQ is enforced, basically. So fairly nominal cost analysis. The benefit, of course, is that removes that barrier, as I mentioned, for those 4 agencies to developing alternative water supplies, which benefits all of the FOSCA agencies. It basically removes that disincentive for paying for water that they just aren't able to use. Okay, so those are the main 3 components that are being amended in the WSA agreement. So recommendation from staff is to adopt or approve both resolutions to both accept the amendments to the WSA and to approve the tier 2 implementation plan. I think as part of the attachments, we had the full plan and the revised red line language, as well as some other like 2-pager briefs on those items.
Any questions?
Nice. Personally, just want to thank you for all the work you put into this, because it's a voluminous amount of stuff, and you made it easy to I mean, there's still a lot to go through, but your reiteration of it this evening helped me really digest what this is all about. So thank you for your hard work on it.
For sure. Thanks. Yeah, Oscar was fortunate enough to provide a lot of materials too that we could base off of. So yeah, they helped a lot. Danielle especially helped a lot in preparing some stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, I wonder if Danielle has any words of wisdom. Danielle, I want to hear your voice. She there?
Maybe she thought she was doing such a great job.
Nope.
Well, Chuck and I also had the benefit of an intro call with Tom at Alaska. About all this.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was just gonna say, I great presentation from Drew, and I would say that is an excellent, I laughed out loud when Kat mentioned that nobody walked away happy, and that's a true sign of a 26 party negotiation. So
You should have brought some music, Daniel, you know? To these meetings. To liven up the party. Nobody was happy.
It was party.
Well, here's what it is, right?
And, you know, one thing, just, you know, every single agency needs to adopt these, for it to be effective.
Yeah,
So we're
some agencies have it under,
looking for-
yeah.
unanimity here otherwise.
Yeah.
So.
So. Nobody else, any questions or stuff?
No, I. Was fairly clear on. The tier one portion of it, I had more. Concerns about the tier two portion of it, got more confusing, I think,
Yeah.
because so much of it is hidden away in the spreadsheet.
It's complex, you know, if it gives you comfort, like, so the spreadsheet, we spent the 2 years going through the spreadsheet as it was developed. There were multiple consultants, actually, so, Elizabeth Flagel from Mountain View, she spent time, she had some time, and I've known her since grad school. Very smart, very, very detail oriented, she went through every line of that model herself and caught some things and some issues. And then after everything was just, it was like a working model as we were running through different scenarios and changing this and changing that. But finally, we went through it, and then they also hired a separate independent consultant to also go line by line through the final model after it was cleaned up, to make sure everything was doing what we all intended it to do. There was no, you know, hidden typos that cause unintended consequences. So there was a lot of vetting to a very complicated Excel model. So
So
we do have. comfort
Did that
there.
result into any amendments to the original document though,
The document or the model?
of the model?
The model, I mean, yeah, I mean, because at first it had so many different options built into it, as we were running different scenarios and saying, what if we use this data? What if we have this as a factor? What if, you know, so,
Mhm.
and we had every possible option under the sun built into it. So once all those things were decided, then they had to strip out and get rid of all the junk that's not gonna be used. So that it's just the data we need for the calculation. So, you know, when you have whatever 20 tab spreadsheet with 26 agencies, there's room for error. So there was a lot of vetting to make sure that it's all caught.
So was there actually an attachment A that's mentioned on that page right there?
Attachment.
It's part of
Exhibit A. So,
That should be
Yeah.
the,
so the way it was stapled, so after each resolution is the exhibits to that resolution. So like the next stapled packet
Oh,
is resolution 2025-20. So the exhibits to
Okay.
that
but
resolution.
attachment B is.
Attachment,
That should be on page 129.
Yes, but that's not a part of the other portions that have the resolution.
Oh,
yeah,
So
attachment B
they
is the
just got out of order and something.
the attachment B is the summary sheets, which is kind of a nice kind of infographic
Right,
explanation of what we're doing. Attachment B and C. And then attachment D is the
okay,
one
so
red zone.
it's the red line version. Exhibit A, okay. As opposed to the other, you do attachment.
yeah.
Trying to make it more complicated.
Right.
So, is there anything else on it? Because your fingerprints are on it too.
not really. I started, I got involved, but then as soon as Kat got on board, I said, Kat, this is for you, and then she got Drew involved. I decided to retire.
This made you retire.
Yeah.
When I went to the initial meetings before I joined, and then I
Yeah.
started going to the meetings, and might have been one or so I couldn't make for whatever vacation or whatever reasons, and
Yeah.
so, but he was involved.
Cool.
There were so many meetings.
Oh,
I think somewhere here we cite how many meetings there were overall.
You ready?
64 meetings.
264 or something like that,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
You ready for motion? We're looking for something, huh?
Yeah, I was going back through, and I had a question about something that. It was more that some of the equations that were stuck in here that are part of the calculation, you know. What are they doing that for and what are they really talking about? Because they were talking about minimums and maximums, but they were the reverse of what the percentage reductions were. Yeah. It got very concerned.
What, like on page 194?
Yeah.
Cutback factors and all that.
Yeah. These cutback and the sample made no sense because you couldn't tell what they were talking about, you know. It was bizarre in some respects. Okay. So we actually need two motions, correct?
Is there a motion for both or
Take a look.
I think you can do one motion.
one motion for both?
Yeah.
Motion for both?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, I would like to offer the motion for resolution 2025-20, approving the amendments to the amended. And resolution 2025-21, approving the tier 2 drought response.
Okay, we have a second?
I'll second.
Vice President Bella,
Yes.
Dr. Covington,
Yes.
Dr. Cotton,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yeah.
When is San Francisco expected to sign? Is it after everybody, all the agencies approve it or?
Yes. And it'll take a while to get everyone through the process, but.
Yeah, Danielle maybe knows how many approved this already, including us now. Danielle?
You are the 10th agency to have approved it now.
So we're about halfway through, almost.
Close.
How much by water supply?
Sorry, come again?
What percentage by water supply has approved it now?
Oh.
Oh, I can actually tell you that. If you just wait 2 seconds.
All right.
30%.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Danielle.
All right, thank you, Danielle.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Bye, Danielle.
Thank you. So moving on to 8B, no, 8C. Which is water service agreement with the Link Hill Street LP for 37 unit multi-family residential development.
Yeah.
We go by it all the time.
Yeah.
Right across the street from town, right?
I was
Yeah,
wondering what
right.
that was gonna be.
Yeah.
It's a dead gas station for decades.
Yeah, the gas station, yeah, it's interesting, because we hear about this at the HIA meetings. Remember, Charles would talk about this, yeah, for a long time. So here it is, right? You know, so, on El Camino Real, the 900 block or so, where you get to the intersection of Hill and El Camino Real, on either side of Hill Street, El Camino Real, there are one vacant lot on the south side, and on the north side, there are 3 parcels. Those 3 parcels, currently 876, 884, and 898 El Camino Real, have been combined and are gonna be under one parcel. I think it's 884 El Camino Real. And that's part of one of the exhibits here in the water service agreement. Is a little kind of confusing. But the intent is on the south side of El Camino Real and Hill Street, the larger lot, they're gonna build 24 multifamily unit complex there. So it's gonna go up about 5 or 6 floors. And then on the north side of Hill Street and El Camino Real, the combined 3 lots into one, they're gonna place 13. So there's a 37 units the multifamily. And if I remember right, Carl was saying that these are all gonna be all, affordable units. Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, part of the district's policy for forever has been when we have, a multifamily or condo or something like that, you know, we get them to sign a water service agreement to pay their connection fee. So that's what this is all about. The water service agreement is something that Catherine and Julie and others, and Hats and Bridget have had their hands in developing the water service agreement. And really what it does, for the most part, is just outlines, you know, what kind of improvements, water system improvements are gonna be made there. So in this particular case, Michael and Jubin work with the developers, engineers to, you know, decide on what kind of, water, domestic water and fire water is going to be there. So on both sides of the street, there are gonna be, I think it's two inch or 1.5 inch domestic water meters feeding each side of the street to feed the units. And then there's one existing fire hydrant there, and they're gonna construct another fire hydrant, right? So those are the improvements that they're going to make. And then, based on the 37 units of, multifamily, there's in our fee schedule, there's a fee for each unit, right? So we've taken that unit, number, multiplied it by the 37 units, come up with it. But our policy also says if they have an existing water service, they get a credit for that if they're not gonna use it. So they actually have 4 current connections that they're gonna get credit for. And so we've reduced that from their water connection fee. You see it on the first page or on page 203. So for the 37 multifamily unit service connection, their charge would be $222,962. We're gonna be inspecting their work, so Michael's got a formula to figure that out, and it's a little under $5,400. And then they're going to pay for the 4 2-inch water meters, which is a little over $8,000. And then you see the 4 existing service credits, which is $10,000 a piece, so it's a total of $40,000. So their overall water connection fee that they're going to pay is $196,275. What's interesting is, in previous water service agreements, some of the board members may remember when we've been in maybe a drought 1 stage or something like that, there is a water demand offset fee that the developer has to pay. We're not in a drought stage right now, so that this one, and some maybe caught it, maybe you didn't, but there is no water demand offset fee in this particular water service agreement. It's just a straight connection fee. And then we've taken into account whether or not they've had any existing services that they get credit for. So, that's what this is, the water service agreement. And what this does, if the board approves it tonight, once we get the signatures of everybody, then, before, CAT will sign off on their construction plan so they can start making their water improvements, they have to pay it to the water connection fee, the $196,000. And so that's a thing that happens here. You know, once the agreement's all signed by all the parties, we make an appointment for those folks to show up here so they can bring their construction plans, and CAT will sign them that they're ready for construction after she's received the check from them that they paid their water connection fee. And these guys are interested in doing that because their construction window's going right now, right? We all know that in our community here, that once we get into the fall and the winter season, there's no construction allowed. So these guys will start turning some dirt there soon.
So,
Yeah.
so those 4 existing services will be abandoned?
Yeah. And Michael, are they all small?
Yeah.
They're all small.
3/4 inch.
3/4 inch.
Yeah, I would imagine that you have probably 3 north of Hill, because there's like those 3, and then
Right.
one.
Exactly.
Where the mechanic used to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So what happens when those are abandoned? Do we have to cap them off, take them out, or what happens?
You want to explain that, Michael?
Yeah, we cut and cap them basically at the water main in the street, so that in the future, if there's ever any excavation or anything like that, we'll be just ripping them out and creating a mess, so.
So typically when we connect to a water main, we have what's called a saddle, and on the saddle, there's actually a valve on it, right? And so we can shut that valve off, and then also when we get to the meter, we put another valve there before we install our meter. So you guys shut the valve up on the saddle, on the pipe as well.
And yeah, because there's gonna be some digging and they're
Oh, yeah.
probably gonna hit it.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you actually sever the line?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's probably what
That's
is
the most
galvanized,
important.
Is it
probably.
It's
galvanized or
copper.
copper?
It's copper.
Copper?
Yeah, but we absolutely cut it.
So
because-
you'll cut it and you just
Exactly,
then separate
yeah.
it from the main, connect it to the main, that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, because in the future, it's abandoned, so we're not gonna locate it when our USA locate comes through, so.
Yeah.
A contractor will come ripping right through real quick and just
Exactly.
rip them right out, so
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have to cut them.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but, you know, cause that vacant lot where the mechanic used to be, it's been vacant for
Yeah.
at least 15 years.
Yeah, and I can remember Carlos Mello, the community development director, brings up at the HIA, gosh, for the last couple of years, it seemed like, you know,
Yeah,
that there was
yeah.
somebody who wanted to do, so they're trying to get the money together because they're trying to make it affordable. You know, so there's pockets of money and tax incentives and stuff like that, and so the
Yeah.
developers try and, you know, get all that lined up, and it took them, I guess, a couple of years to get that all lined up, and now they're ready.
The mechanics that used to operate there, I still go to them over on Quarry.
I was on court, yeah.
They moved on Quarry Avenue.
Yeah.
I still go to them for all my cars.
Wow,
I've known them for a long time. yeah.
wow. Interesting.
So they're gonna have a bunch of underground parking, they need to dig deep holes there.
Hey, did you guys,
I think they do have underground parking, but it's not a
not a lot.
lot.
So I wasn't, they're small lots, they can't put in a
Yeah.
whole lot of parking.
Yeah, there's not a lot of landscaping or anything like that.
No one drives anymore. They all take mass transit.
Right.
What world are you in?
It's right across the street, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very convenient.
Yeah,
Yeah, but still.
Yeah,
They'll have to-
again,
well, that was part of the incentive also too, I imagine, for the developers to build right there, and they get, again, tax incentives for building near, you know, the Caltrain corridor.
Mhm.
it's amazing this property goes back so far.
Yeah,
I mean, just the history of it. And it's very, it's just part of Mez's original ranch. On that, so when they're digging, who knows what they're gonna find under there, the artifacts of old Belmont.
this part of Belmont, the community is gonna look different in the next 10 years,
Oh, big time.
big time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did they do they didn't do the remediation yet, have they? Because I'm sure that gun is contaminated, for
Oh,
sure,
it's gotta be, yeah.
especially where the mechanic used to be, you know?
Servicing your cars. huh?
Yeah, all your oil.
All the grease in your
freezes down.
the Bellamobiles.
Yeah, the old oil.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, God. All right, well,
Okay,
what else?
any other questions on? it? Comments? Then we can,
Chuck, you want to offer this,
yeah,
So this motion, resolution 2025-22. Authorizing water service between Mid-Penn and Link Hill Street.
Very good, all second,
okay.
Director Cotton,
Yes.
Vice President Bella,
yes.
Director Covington,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes.
Very good, good to work.
Build that up.
The report on the district's cross connection control plan.
Yeah, so, the district and all water agencies throughout the state were notified by the state of California that they were making changes to backflow or cross connection. The regulations for that, and so, you know, the district notified that we need to update our plan, so, you know, we've been working on it for quite some time now, a group of us, including Michael and four other operators. Looking back into history, I mean, you know, I've been in water for gosh, almost 40 years now. And so I can remember back in the 90s, cross connection was a big thing, and working another small agency, you know, getting somebody to come out in our community and do the hazard assessment to find out where the potential for cross connection was. It's been around a long time. You know, and looking back in district records that I could find on our file server, the computer system, I found some stuff going back to 2005. So, you know, 2005, and then when I got here in 2015, the district had just updated its cross connection control plan. So 10 years later, so here we are again, 10 years later, and the state's come up with some new rules. And I just don't remember being on a 10-year cycle, but it kind of seems like that. So here's a 10-year cycle. The state said, you know, we've made some changes to the cross connection rules. And so you all need to update your plan and submit it to us. And I'll go over the changes in a little bit, but maybe I'll explain a little bit what cross connection is. You know, so typically, because water systems are always under pressure, water's moving in one kind of direction, right? And so what happens if you have the fire department, they're out there fighting a fire, and fire folks just start opening the fire hydrants, there could be a change in the direction of that flow. And in your house, there could actually literally be a suction in the water instead of going into your house, leaving your house, right? So that's what people will call a backflow into the water system. Well, if you happen to have a water hose, just say in your backyard, and you've got it in your swimming pool, right? And the water hose is open, and all of a sudden this fire department creates this suction back, or it could be a water main break out in the street, water is rushing out rapidly, it could create a reverse movement of the water. It could literally suck water out of that pool and bring it in through your house and then all the way out to the street. Well, what happens if you have, maybe not to hose the pool, but you got in a bucket of some bleach or maybe some Roundup that you're mixed up because you're gonna spray out some weeds? You could put some sort of contaminant in the public water supply. So for years, you know, there are engineers who develop these devices, backflow devices, and I'm sure you see them around here. They're all over the community. People who have backflow devices currently in front of their place of business and in some places in front of their residence, we require them whenever somebody puts in a fire sprinkler system. The idea is if there happens to be a backflow because of a water main rupture or something like that, water from somebody's house or somebody's place of business cannot go past that backflow device if it's properly maintained. And by law, somebody has to go out there who's certified as a backflow tester every year and go out there and test that backflow device. And only that person can go out there and make any corrections to the device if it's not working, if it's leaking. Sometimes you'll see them leaking, they'll be drinking water, which is an indication it's not working properly. So that's what a backflow situation is. And so the state's telling everybody, you guys have to prepare for that and you have to have a plan for that. The district here for a long time that has worked with the county of San Mateo, their environmental health office, and they actually are the folks who send out the letters to customers of ours who currently have backflow devices on their water service going to their place of business or their home. We have a little over 1,000 backflow devices currently in the system, Michael. And so the county notifies these people on an annual basis, hey, Mr. Cotton, you have a backflow device at, 850 El Camino Real. Here's your notice, you need to get it tested and you've got so much time in order to do that. And most people will comply. Every once in a while, we'll get a notice from the county saying, hey, Chuck Cotton hasn't, we've notified him 3 times now and he's just not getting his backflow device tested. And we have to tell Mr. Cotton, you need to get your backflow device tested or we could technically shut your water off because, you have the potential. And so people end up complying, but we do that from time to time. So that's a little bit of background of what cross connection and backflow is. And so we've been working on our plan, updating it, this group and us, and myself. And we're pretty much at the point. But one of the things that we considered before we got there is, we said, look, we need to talk to, because we shared borders with other water agencies, right? Cal Water surrounds us, Foster City is next door and so on. And we said, hey, let's talk to those people before we submit our plan to the state to make sure that, whatever we're doing, and I'll explain a little bit, that we're kind of consistent, we're not too different. So if, a couple of neighbors talk to each other, not saying, well, how come you're doing this and they're doing this? You guys don't talk to each other and, the rules are that different. So we want to do that before we submit our plan to the state. In analyzing the plan and the things that we saw, I think there were just really two major things that we saw. The first one is the current plan that's in place right now, and when you read it, it says that the person who's responsible for administering the plan for the district is the general manager. Well, that's changed. The state now has said that the person who's going to be administering the cross connection plan for any water agency has to be a cross connection specialist. What is a cross connection specialist? A cross connection specialist is a person who has taken a course and passed the state's test to be a backflow tester. The person who go out there and services and maintains the backflow devices that are out there in the system. You have to have that certificate. And then after that, you have to take another 40-hour class and then take another state exam for the specialist. And if you pass that specialist exam, now you're considered a cross connection specialist. And so that's what the state's saying that we have to have. Either we have to have a person with that specialist certificate on staff, or we have to hire a consultant or somebody who's going to be available to the district within an hour's notice if we find out that we have a cross connection someplace. We fortunately have, two people and one who just took the test today that are cross-connection specialists.
He passed, so we have 3.
Oh, we have three? Okay, good for Trevor. So the district actually has 3 employees, 3 water system operators, or actually a lead operator and 2 water system operators, that have passed a specialist test. So we'll be able to put that in our plan to the state that, hey, we've got 3 people we could lean on if we ever have a cross connection. And then the other thing that we saw that was different from, the current plan is, this assessment, right? You go on out there, right now, so there are, 1,000 folks who, have cross connection devices at their service. And so there was some sort of assessment that was done to determine whether or not they had the potential of, contaminating the water supply. That's why the backflow device there for certain reasons. Well, the state's saying now that we're gonna have to go out there and do an assessment on every connection, whether it's a single family residence or a place of business, which is new. And so, they haven't told us how long we have to do it. And so we've talked about it and we're proposing, for us, we're going to focus on the most potential for cross connection is in the commercial industrial, area. So we're gonna hit those customers first. And then after that, over time, we'll have to get out there and hit all of our, 6,000 plus residential connections. And so that's where we want to talk to some of the agencies on how they're approaching that. How much time are they giving themselves to do that? We think for us, because again, we're going to try and do it with our own operations staff, the 12 people that are out there in the field. It's going to take us probably a good 10 years to do that, and besides, the regular operations that we need to do here. So, that to me, and we're talking about this afternoon, those are the 2 biggest changes from the current plan that the district has with the new regulations is having a specialist that we put in our plan that we have somebody. And then that we're gonna have to come up with a plan for how long it's gonna take to do all these individual assessments. We thought we would do them a certain way where we might be able to use a form that we can just send out via email or a QR code or whatever. And talking with Catherine and so on and talking with others and said, you're better off because the state's basically putting the onus on the water district as the water supplier that you're gonna be signing off. If you give somebody just a form and say, here, sign this off, and they tell you that, no, my house is fine, there's no cross connection here. Then, we're saying, okay, we're good with that. And what if there's a cross connection there in the future? Then we're potentially liable for having accepted this form. So really, we need to go out there and physically, take a look at each and every connection and find out, if there's a potential for cross connection.
So that goes also for multi-unit. So being on my board for years, we had to have our backflows inspected. I thought it was an annual basis. And so now you're saying there's another layer on top of that now?
No. So the annual basis will continue. And as long as your device is, in good service, you'll be fine. But those, and I can't think of any multifamily or condo or, that don't have backflow devices.
Right.
I think they pretty much all do. It's really gonna be, going out to a bunch of single family homes, which we've never had to go out there and take a
Those are
look
not
at.
mandatory, right?
It's mandatory.
Now,
Yeah.
but they weren't. For
It
many,
wasn't
many years.
before.
The inspection is mandatory,
The
not to
inspection.
have it, but we're.
The
we have to-
assessment to find out if the Villa home has a potential cross connection and now needs a backflow device out there where you don't have one now. The only places where we require residential folks to have backflow devices is if they put in fire sprinklers.
Correct,
We make people do that and then
but that is not a requirement on single family line or backflow.
right. Yeah, right now, if you don't have, because we haven't done a hazard assessment on you, we're just saying that you probably don't have a backflow or cross connection, so you don't have anything. But we're gonna have to, over some sort of period of time, go out there and visit each and every one of our connections, residential, multifamily,
Single family as well.
everybody.
And then what, and then you.
And then
make a
based on that
plan.
assessment, we'll say whether or not we feel that you need the specialist will have to decide whether or not you need to have a backflow device at your meter service.
There's a list of stuff, it's not just sprinklers, but
Yeah.
a storage tank or chemical feed into your, for your grass. There's some automated chemical.
You'll see, when we bring the plan to the board to take a look at, we'll go through it, and there's a whole list of things that, are potential cross connections, and most of them don't apply to residential. The biggest thing for residential is just your sprinkler system, you know, your lawn sprinklers or your garden sprinklers, that type of thing. You know, most people don't think about it, but that's probably your biggest liability. And the other thing that people have, if you have a pool or a spa, you probably already have a backflow device, you know, but those require backflow because, you know, you're putting chemicals in your pool, your hot tub. So, but it's really, you know, it's a commercial, industrial, and for the most part, all those have cross connection or backflow devices on them now.
So kind of the point of tonight is to kind of update you, you know, each agency is required to adopt a cross-connection control plan
Yeah.
by July
July 1.
1. We're not making that deadline. We've requested an extension from the state, and they've said fine, and we're working with them.
Yeah,
But where we would have been done, the only thing is we just wanted the extra coordination with our neighbors to make sure. Hopefully we're aligned, hopefully we're doing the same thing, and have a little time to work that out with them. And so we'll bring it back. If we get it done by July, we'll bring it in July. If not, it'll be September. And we'll go through kind of the more of the details of what we're gonna require of residents, the kind of prioritization of the hazards we're gonna look at first and how we're gonna approach it.
yeah, and
We can go into those details, but the point of tonight was, you know, in case you hear or know, we need to have one adopted by July 1. Well, we're not, we have an extension, we're on top of it. It's not that it just has been forgotten.
yeah. And then we're working on a public education component, you know, working with John, we're just talking about John Davidson. You know, working with John Davidson to come up with a web page so people can go there and get some FAQs, some facts and stuff like that. So education is a component of the plan, you know, what we're gonna be doing. And there's gonna be a lot of education because again, you know, especially for the single family residents, not something that, you know, people really heard
They're
now.
not cheap, you're gonna have.
Oh,
you're
God.
gonna Have a revolution.
Oh, yeah.
It's not-
We've
it's not
talked
gonna
about
be-
that. Can you imagine, you know?
Because even for single family dwelling for fire sprinklers, okay, they never require it because it's part of the system. And you never have any standing water there because the water keeps on circulating when you flush and everything else is all connected. Now, we're gonna go tell them, hey, you know what, we need to put this device in.
And so, yeah,
It's
and
going to
part of it is, again, the overall idea is again to protect the water supply from contamination, right? That's coming off,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course.
And that's the overall goal there. And so now, again, in the past, that onus had been on the customer. You know, you're responsible for protecting. Now they put the onus on the public water supplier. You've got to protect the water supply.
Does that mean that if we tell a customer that there needs to be a backflow device, that the water has to put it in?
No.
Or can we rely on the
The
customer?
customer will have
That's
to put
where
it in.
the,
Yeah, that's
The
why
devil
you're
is,
gonna have
because-
a solution.
yeah,
The customer has to
those
put
are
it in
thousands of
at their
dollars.
expense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's where it's going to be.
And that's what we're telling ourselves. I mean, it seemed like the state's kind of going towards, you know, just making everybody put in a backflow device. And you go, that's gonna be expensive and talk about.
Rather than just making sure they have backflow devices on their irrigation system.
We try not to get on the property,
Right,
right? So the backflows that we're talking about are right by the meter. Right, so that way, whatever somebody does on their property, we're not policing it, we don't wanna get on the property.
Yeah.
The backflow is right there, not right next to the meter, so we know it, we see it, it's accessible. But most residences, already have some backflows, as Renaud was saying, for their pool. Some have it for their fire sprinklers, some have it for their regular sprinklers, cause that's just good practice to have those. But we don't see it, we don't maintain it, or we don't see it and we don't know if it's being maintained. But this official one that's right by the meter and our standards and standards for virtually every water district has a certain distance that you can have it from the meter, because you don't want anybody connecting between the meter and the backflow. You want those to be one unit essentially.
Yeah.
And those, on the sprinkler, I think for the past 10 to 15 years, I think 15 years, basically any sprinkler, new sprinklers that have come in have been required to put in backflows. So there may be some legacy ones out there that were put in.
I mean, I remember going back like 10 years, residential sprinkler system ordinance were passed about 20 years ago. So.
But we've been requiring those when their sprinklers are, if the residential is being put in, then we require them to put a backflow in.
And even for single family dwelling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because to your point, single family dwellings don't normally have a separate irrigation sprinkler line, it's the same line.
Yes.
Yeah.
The domestic
Yeah.
line, and then you branch off,
Right.
so. At this point, you will put it on the main connection coming from the meter, so it protects everything.
But I'm trying to imagine what the assessment is going to involve. How are they going to try and find things inside the building?
And what's the criteria?
What are the criteria going to be? Because otherwise they just walk around the building and locate all of the irrigation systems and make sure they have backflow preventers on them.
Yeah, it's not the requirements are for fire, sprinkler systems, not necessarily irrigation systems unless there's a chemical feed into that irrigation system.
Okay,
But I think there's probably gonna be a checklist. So for tonight, I think we're just kind of getting the overview,
just
but
talking about a process, I would just be interested in seeing
Right.
the criteria when they
Yeah.
come out.
And when we have
Just
the,
curious.
when we bring the plan, we'll also have, the, operators who developed it, who have the cross connection certification, we'll have them here and they'll kind of talk about their thought process as well as what we plan to do.
Yeah.
So we can get into those details.
Yeah, because there is a checklist that, has been shared with us, and so we've been looking at that. So when you go on site, whether it's a home or a place of business, things that you'd be looking for potential, cross connection. So there is something that's already out there, so to speak. I can't talk to, because I just don't know enough about it. I don't want to confuse you guys.
Oh, I can see where, certainly with the business or that type of thing,
Yeah.
maybe putting feed water into tanks and various
Right,
things and
right.
so on, they have to be doing that already, I would assume. But
Yeah, I would think that most, single family homes, you're not gonna have a cross connection unless you're doing some kind of business or something there that involves the use of water, But just generally speaking, not. I think that the biggest, I think the biggest thing that we're probably gonna see is people who have some sort of lawn sprinkler system that, has probably installed the anti-siphon valves, incorrectly, right? You're supposed to have them a foot above, the sprinkler that's the highest in elevation out in your system or something like that, and so I can see.
well, that doesn't work on an uphill line.
Yeah, so there you go, so that's probably where they actually need to have a backflow device possibly because of that, and there are some rules with regards to the height differential, right, between the highest point in your property, your house where water is being used and where the water's coming in, is it like 40 foot or something? Yeah, so if you have some kind of like a 40-foot difference between where water's being used, the highest point, and where the water's coming in, if it's over 40 foot, that's a cross connection,
Yeah.
and that could happen in Belmont just because of the
Oh, easy.
topography here.
You
Yeah.
have a lot of connections with
Yeah,
uphill, yeah.
so stuff like that is gonna be different.
One thing to add is I've just, we work with a number of other agencies and Mid-Penn staff is very on top of this and especially compared to other agencies. So I think you guys are going to be well served and especially talking with other peer agencies to coordinate because this is such a significant change. And so when they come back to you with the developed plan, it'll be fully vetted and ready for you guys to take a look at.
But Brenna, I also heard you say that the state mandated, right?
That state's telling everybody, their state's telling you have to have your plan in by July 1.
Hmm.
And so we're not gonna hit that target. We're right there, but Catherine, it's a good word. We haven't completely vetted it the way we think we want to. Again, just because we share a lot of common borders with some other water agencies and this is such a big thing, we just want to make sure that if we're doing something and Cal Water doing something a little bit different, what is that difference and how closely can we be more aligned or whatever, so that when you guys talk to each other on a Saturday morning, hey, did you hear what Cal Water did or Mid-Penn did about backflow devices? Oh yeah, they were kind of talking about the same thing and we're not doing this,
We're not the only ones though.
No, we're not the only
That's the message is that most agencies are not gonna make that July 1 update. I think that's the whole goal of just letting you know as the decision makers is that
Yeah.
there's a deadline and but a lot of agencies are not meeting it, and there's an extension.
Yeah.
What I was getting at though, is if it's state mandate, I was gonna ask, is there any state funding? It Goes along with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is-
you know, it's just like you do this, okay, yeah, it's gonna cost me X amount.
No, but that goes into the staffing level question that you asked, Louis. It's, you know, we have this massive mandate now. So what does that do to staffing levels? It doesn't shrink them.
Well, it depends on how many assessments you have to do and when and how that
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. It's how we manage it, but it
Yeah,
is.
that's how we manage it.
But the state legislation was only passed a year or so ago.
Right, and,
So it was a fairly short timeframe.
Well,
I
the
think
backflow guys were in there making sure this thing got through the legislature.
Right.
Gonna create a whole industry.
yeah,
It's, I can just tell you from our own experience, finding qualified people to come out and, you know, we've had hairline cracks and our big backflows. And you've got to shut the whole thing down and it's a very involved project. And
It's
it's just the
expensive.
unit, 12, 15,000.
Yeah.
per one. I mean, that's for a condo complex, but
Yeah.
still, pull all that out. It's very disruptive. And just we went through at least 3 vendors. There's
Wow.
one I think we're using now, just called the backflow guy. And I'm like, you know, again, put some dude with an old crappy pickup or something. Yeah,
Backflow guy.
the guy.
Right. The guy.
But it's just like, the state throws that mandate down on everybody, that's gonna put enormous pressure on a very finite skill set.
Okay,
Thanks for that.
well, thank you, Rena. Very entertaining discussion.
Yeah, you got more?
leave it in a couple months. You'll have plenty to deal with.
Going on to 8E, we have the water quality, the quarterly water conservation report.
Thought we'd give Drew a little break, a chance to rest. And you'll notice that the quarterly conservation report's it's not quite exactly on schedule, but you know, we're adapting it with, you know, other agenda items and make it work, so.
Oh, this is for March.
Yeah, so kind of, just a few things here. One is, a new pending bill that we are aware of, the Assembly Bill 93, data center water usage. Basically, this is a new bill, that's, you know, not signed into law yet, it's still under review and going through the legislative process, but basically would require, data centers to, track and record the amount of water use that they use. It also, required DWR to develop guidelines for best management practices for water use efficiency. Just to give a little background, you know, data centers basically are like giant servers that are used for, you know, oftentimes for like AI or other, you know, technology. They're large, buildings that require a lot of power and often a lot of water for cooling. These data centers get really, really hot, so they require a lot of water cooling towers to keep them cool. So it's a big concern in the Bay Area right now, like how much energy and also water that these data centers are gonna be using, especially with this huge, you know, push for AI right now. So this new bill, if passes, would require new, you know, developers to, estimate the amount of water that these entities are gonna use before they, you know, get a business license, and to report annually on the amount of water they're using, each year. It would also require us as a water agency to report on any data center water usage that we have, while we do a Prop 218, you know, rate study or, rate increase, demand study. So it's just something that we're tracking and seeing if this is gonna pass, and so I think it'll actually provide a lot of useful data and information for us, for our planning purposes. Something I attended a conference about a month ago in Redwood City, a life sciences development conference. And there was a lot of talk about that industry basically not doing too hot right now. A lot of these developers have been building these huge life sciences developments and nobody's moving in. And so there's these big, beautiful, but empty buildings that they're trying to figure out how to fill. So some of the strategies that some of these businesses are converting some of the areas to data center usage as well as life sciences, that kind of like a hybrid use. So, you know, in our service area, we have a few, I think, 3 known planned or what were gonna be life sciences developments that, you know, could potentially go down this route of converting to a more data center or more, you know, AI focused land use. None of it have even started being built yet, but it's something that we're, you know, keeping in mind of and tracking. So anyway, just a useful legislation that I think will be helpful for us and something that we'll need to keep track of. That will, yeah, hopefully give us some insight about how much water these data centers are actually using in the bay.
If I can add,
Mhm.
so it's interesting because the kind of disclosure by the developer happens at the business license stage, not the building stage or anytime earlier. So it's not like we have any discretion, right? Like, it's just gonna happen and then it'll be reported and we'll have to, you know, deal with it. But and who knows how this legislation will evolve as they all do, things change. But you know, I think it's, and when Drew told me at the life sciences conference that, and it makes sense, but it was kind of a light bulb moment where they're like, well, they can't sell life sciences, so they're gonna do data centers. Oh, boy, we have a whole lot of area that's being rezoned for life sciences as well, and what is that gonna mean? So I think it's a conversation that we can also kind of start having with the city, like, how do you view this? What do you see coming? If you start seeing this coming, you know, put it on our radar, let's talk, let's think about it, cause it, and then Drew's also doing some research to see really how does, and this is very hard data to find, but how does data center water usage compare to life science water usage? So those water supply assessments we just did, how does it change that, or does it, and include that in the urban
Is
water
it for
management plan?
cooling? Is that what they?
Yeah, water cooling to cool the.
Massive amount of energy, which
Yeah.
generates so much heat,
So heat,
so.
right.
Yeah, dissipate the heat somehow.
Yeah, so just something that we're kind of tracking, and that if it passes, it would be in, I think, September this year, so that we'll see what happens there with the bill. Apart from that, so just some summaries of some water conservation stuff happening. So our water efficient landscape ordinance, we've had about 40 this year, this fiscal year, in various stages of completion or pre-approval or are currently in process. And just for some background, if y'all don't know, that ordinance is basically for any new construction or any renovations for properties that have landscaping to, we basically are required to review those landscaping plans to make sure that they are using, you know, water efficient best management practices. So we've had about 40 of those, and we coordinate with the city of Belmont to review those plans before they get a building permit approved. Apart from that, we for our rebate programs, we've had 2 Long Be Gone rebates issued this year, 8 rain barrels, 7 smart irrigation controllers, and then none of the irrigation hardware programs have rebated. And I think, you know, we can look at the charts here, but I think typical for a non-drought year that these rebate programs always have less involvement and you know, participation than during, yeah, you know, more conservation focused years, so. Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. Thank you. Report on California and San Francisco regional water system.
Yeah, so looking at the US drought map and then actually the California, the next one, there hasn't really been a lot of change in the drought conditions. You know, let's go to the next one, California, to look at that, Allison, thanks. And that's interesting, you know, because again, we just didn't have a lot of rain this year, and you're gonna see that our rainfall is actually below normal. You know, and even with all that, the state of California still is showing, you know, a very low drought condition, so to speak. The northern half, which includes us, I mean, really not showing any kind of drought and impairments. It's only when you get down to the south, you see that the drought picks up. So I find that interesting. You know, I guess it's just that the color in the map is gonna start creeping up in Northern California if we continue to have some light rain years. The next slide. The reservoirs, they're all looking really good, you know, even though, again, we did have a lot of rain, there was still enough snow that the melting snow now has filled up the reservoirs. And so now irrigation season started in California, right? The farmers are, you know, they planted tomatoes and melons and stuff like that. So we're gonna start to see the reservoir levels drop. The significant one that, I always like to point to, one of them is a San Luis one, kind of like in the middle left of the California map there. That one is not quite as full as the rest of them, but everybody else throughout the state is pretty full, that they're above the historic levels, and most of them are near their capacity, with the exception of San Luis, but still healthy for a winter that wasn't that wet and didn't have a lot of snow. Next slide, Allison. So the rainfall, showing here, the first couple of rows or columns, I'm sorry, columns, just pointing out that this year, you know, the rainfall for the state of California in these cities and places I picked is gonna be below normal. Compare that to the right side of this table, which was last year around the same time, well above normal, you know, so this has been a dry year comparison. The rainfall totals have ranged anywhere from like 37% of normal to as high as like 88, 89% of normal. So not even, you know, not even close to being 100% normal, but that's what it is. And yet the drought conditions in the state aren't that bad. We know they've been worse. Next slide, Allison. And so the precipitation outlook from NOAA is showing that at least in California, you know, we've got an even chance of it being above average or below average rainfall. Okay. That doesn't really tell us much, but that's kind of what they're predicting for the next 3 months in the state. And then the next slide is about temperatures. And so that one, you know, in summertime, it's supposed to be warm, right? So NOAA's saying that for our part of California, there's a good chance that our temperatures are going to be above the normal temperatures for that part of the country, you know. And then the next slide is, you know, the SFPUC, these next 4 or 5 slides, the SFPUC didn't make a presentation at Bosca, but they send out weekly information about the water system. And so I found this Hetchy precipitation chart. And so the gray chart is the current water year, and the red bars are the historic levels for rain in each of the months in the water year. So you can see that, you know, the rain over the last couple of months, you know, April and May have just not been anywhere near what the historic is. And we had a couple of really wet months in February and March and even in November, but the rest of it's just been below that. And so not good, but again, it just really hasn't shown itself on the overall drought map. And the next slide is taking a look, a different way of looking at that previous bar chart. It's just now comparing the volume of rain and precipitation. You know, the black line is the 30-year average, and the red line is the red line is what's this year. So we're actually below the 30-year average, and kind of tracking the green dot right below the red line is 2024. So we're kind of tracked where 2024 hits, and you know, most likely we're not going to get much rain. We're through the part of the year where we get most of our rain, so it's going to be pretty dry. I think the next one has to do with snowpack. Yeah. So here's the snowpack, and again, the black line is a 30-year historic average for stope, and the red is where we're at this year. And so, you know, again, you see the snowpack was less than the 30-year, and then the blue dots that kind of surround the black line and the red line is last year. So you can see we're actually below 2024 as well. But again, you know, the reservoirs in the system are all pretty full, and the drought's not that bad. But we can't take, you know, several more years of this, because then we'll start really feeling the drought impacts. Next slide, Allison. So here's the regional water system storage conditions. You know, we can hold a little under 1.5 million acre feet of water, and right now we're at, you know, 1.4 million acre feet plus, so we're like at 96% full, looking pretty good. And when you always hear, and I can remember just hearing Steve Ritchie, when we've got in the Tuolumne system, the water bank filled with 570,000 acre feet, he's always happy. And so right now, you know, we've been at 570,000 acre feet for the last few years, but there have been years in the past where it's been dry and we might be half of that. And he starts getting concerned that, you know, they may have to ask people to conserve water, you know, but so far the last couple of years, we haven't had to do that. So we're looking pretty healthy. And the water storage has increased a little bit when compared to last year. So we're going into the summertime looking really good. Next slide. So this is a slide that I kind of like this one because it gives you that span, that green shaded area span. We don't get that one with the monthly report at the region, at the water managers meeting, but in one of their other reports, they'll send this one out, and sometimes we get, sometimes we don't. But this is the overall regional water deliveries, right? So we're in excess of approaching 230 million gallons a day on average. You know, and that's above the numbers for the last few years, and get to the point where maybe 2020, we're gonna kind of hit the 2020 mark, and we're gonna see that in our own use, you know, that if you go down to the next slide, I think that it's the community here, yeah. So our numbers for 2025 now, which is that kind of orange colored line, it's exceeded all the past 2 or 3 years. And I think it's just gonna keep increasing, and we're not gonna get the blue line up there is 2013, and I heard Kirk mention that was the last year that we used a lot of water in the community here, and ever since 2013, you know, the community here has really taken water use efficiency to heart, and we've been able to, you know, have much less water demand overall. But I think this year we're probably gonna be we're probably gonna have more water use this year than we've had in quite some time. And I think the second to last slide is just a cumulative. So the blue line is just a cumulative water purchase or take from San Francisco over an entire 12-month period. And the green is just for these past 5 months. And you can see now, I think we're like 2% below that blue line. I wouldn't be surprised by the end of the year if the cumulative water use by the system exceeds the 5-year average. I think we're just gonna be using a lot of water this year, and that's with the rate increase too. You know, people just want to use water. And we've got a lot of water. I mean, you hear Drew talking about water efficiency landscape. We've got 38 plans in there, so people are doing things to reduce their water demand by, you know, changing, you don't see a lot of lawn planted anymore. Just, you know, shrubs and plants that are more water efficient, but still, you know, people are using water. They're finding ways to use water. But, you know, I think the last slide is just a graph of fire risk potential throughout the nation. And so we're coming out of the spring when things have been wet, and we're gonna start getting, you know, dry conditions because of, you know, winds and the lack of humidity and those types of things. So it's still a low risk pretty much in California. Though here within the past week in certain parts, I think in my neck of the woods where I live, we had a PG&E power safety power shut off. We're out in the rural hinterlands there where people have homesteads. They shut the power off because the wind is blowing so strong, and the grass that out there were all dry. There was a concern of potential fires. And so I think that's kind of the light brownish streak you see there in the middle of California is those areas. You know, but we'll see how this map changes over the next few months. If we can still find it on the internet with, you know, people or certain agencies no longer, you know, having the ability to grab data. So that's the water supply. It's looking good. I mean, the drought's not that bad, especially in Northern California, not seeing the drought effects. The reservoir statewide and in the regional system all look real healthy right now. But we're going into the water season. You know, farmers are using water. They received, I was looking at this, the farmers or people who have contracts for federal water, state water, were told that they were getting 50% of their allocation. I mean, in years past, sometimes they've gotten none of their allocation, right? They've had to rely on groundwater, pumping that out. But they're getting 50% of their surface water allocation, which is a good thing, which, you know, but that just means they're gonna use more of that stored reservoir water that we have. Okay. Yeah. Good.
Manager reports. Treasurer.
All right. Okay, so we just finished up the month of May. So we should be at approximately 92% of our budget, assuming everything is straight line. Month to month, everything is even. So our revenues came in at 92% of budget, and our expenditures are coming a little bit lower, at 88.5% of the budget. So yeah, it's always a plus when expenditures come lower. So we have a $3 million net surplus that goes right to the reserves. That's a little bit lower than what it was last year, you know, that surplus piece, but I mean, we're still adding to our reserves at this point. The primary changes, of course, is the water commodity charges. And that's about $1.7 million higher than last year, as well as fixed system charges, which is about $500,000 as compared to last year at this time. The investment earnings have been, overall, they've been pretty much on par with what we've been expecting. With the exception of adjustments for fair value. You'll see that there's a fair value change in the COP funds, because we have some longer term investments. So the fair value doesn't necessarily. It's a little bit lower than, well, as of May 31st, it's a little bit lower than what we're hoping. So you'll see, it looks like we have an investment loss, but that tends to resolve itself as things mature. So it's unrealized. There's no cash changes the way we account for those investments. So those are the most significant changes related, or for the investment piece. So total revenues, we've received about $17 million so far this year. We still have 1 month that we can collect a bunch more. The salaries and benefits piece, we're running about $508,000 under budget at this point. And then purchased water, where it's about $638,000 under budget. So we still have that last month that we have to account for June. Within the packet, excuse me, we also have in the reserve report, which is a few pages down. Let's see here. So now that we have the investments related to the COPs, we've listed out the investments by, for the next 12 months, by the amount that's going to be maturing. So you'll be able to see that breakout of month by month. And then I have because there's a lot of investments in there. So I broke it down by fiscal year. So you'll be able to see, say, in fiscal year 27, the district between July and June will receive 15 million. And then fiscal year 28 is a little bit less, and you'll see that kind of maturity schedule that's going to come down the pipe as those investments mature. As we stand as of May 31st, of course, operating reserve is at 100%. Capital reserve is also at 100%. Rate stabilization is at about 13,000 or 1%. And then we do have a reserve for debt service. It got up to 100% as of June 1st. And then it dropped right down because we made our debt service payments on June 1st. So that'll we have a schedule to refill that over the next 6 months so we can meet our next principal and interest payment, which is due on December 1st. But you won't see those numbers reported here because this is a day before. So, and I will open it up to questions at this point.
I have a quick question on the system surveys. But that seems to like drop off almost entirely.
So we have one major project in there, so it's part of the CIP project, but it's not really a capitalizable project. It's the transmission main assessment project 20-05. We've incurred a few expenditures on that, but the overall budget was $625,000. So what's going to happen is that amount specifically for that project will roll over to the new fiscal year for us to utilize those funds in the upcoming fiscal year.
So you think we're gonna end up with a little surplus?
Looks like we're gonna have a big.
We're going to have a big surplus.
Comparison to the whole budget, it's a little.
I think our projections are pretty close to where we wanted them to be, so, yeah.
We knew when we raised the rates that we were going to take in a little bit more money than we were going to spend this year.
Yeah, but that's also because of the water purchase too.
Yeah.
What, 600K there?
Yeah, so far.
The new rates were expecting that we were going to take in a little more money And we would put that aside for,
We have to give them all to render them.
oh, that big party is gonna get it.
No, I was thinking about the backflow.
The backflow?
prevention program. That's what I was thinking about.
Gonna subsidize all the backflow devices, huh?
That's right.
Put a statue up for you.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. I tell you.
Our meetings might be more popular.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of screaming people.
You have anything to add?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you.
Good, Mr. James, very good.
Moving on, district engineer.
Yeah, I've said this before, I love going after the accountant, the treasurer, because I get to spend all the money. He has saved, the budget that you approved earlier in the meeting had, a lot of money for capital expenditures, right? So 13 million in debt service, 6 million in pay-go. And these are the projects that were all listed there, line item, so they kind of match up here. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? This is where we're actually gonna start digging up the streets, building new tanks and so forth. A couple of things I wanted to highlight on the report. The first one, the DLNO, the Coben Lincoln Newell Oak Knoll Water Main Project is gonna start on Monday. That's really exciting. We've been working on that project for a while. Really narrow streets, really constrained areas that we're gonna be working with. Lots of notifications to the homeowners. It's not that we're probably gonna still get some feedback on those once we start digging the streets, but we've done a lot of due diligence there to make sure that the residents are notified. So the project will start on Monday. First couple of weeks are probably a couple of months are a lot of potholing where they go out and dig to make sure that things are where we thought they were. And then they're gonna start laying main. On that particular project, there'll be a separate report starting next month with pictures and how that project is doing, which is how we report out capital projects once they start. It'll have its own separate report with all the finances, change orders and those kind of things. The rest of the projects are in design. One thing I wanted to highlight was two, the Coben tank replacement project, which is fairly large, $4 to $5 million replacement project. One of the things we found out was working with the structural engineers, we're right in the cusp of a code update. And so we're gonna wait a couple of months, maybe a month, to get onto the new code. The code gets updated every 3 years and we just don't wanna say that we built these tanks and the code has already changed, so we're gonna just wait a little bit and catch the new code and go from there.
That's a specific code for water tanks or?
No,
plumbing code?
No, it's not a plumbing code, it's just earth seismic, structural seismic code.
Goes in a 3-year cycle too, just like the building code and. the
It
plumbing
is,
code?
it catches the building, so the building code incorporates these provisions of the seismic.
Okay, all right.
So it's on the same cycle as the CBC,
Yeah,
the California Building Code.
yeah.
So that doesn't get updated until January 1st, 2026, but we'll have the codes starting July 1st, so we'll know what the codes are, we can design to it. We don't, because we're a water district and we're governed by the water code, we don't have to submit to the city or any planning agency for when we're doing updates to our facilities. So it's just internally, we're designing to the latest code. And then Director Cotton, that transmission main, water main assessment project that was referred to is right there, 20-05. We're still working with vendors to identify one that can do the specialty inspection that we're looking at doing. So it's just taking a little bit more time. We met with two, both of them had really good, there was good positives and negatives to their equipment and their ability to do the inspection. So we're trying to find a singular one that will do everything. And then lastly, on the second page, a couple of projects with the city that we're working on. They're doing a sewer project throughout the area that Mike and his team are working and coordinating with them. And then, lastly, the Twin Parks Detention Basin, this is at the parking lot of the City Hall. And we have some facilities there, and they've asked us to relook at those facilities, so we're working with them, with the city, Public Works Department and city manager, city attorney to see who's gonna pay for that,
Yeah, I
so.
was gonna say, are we actually working with them or?
Well, is that mic on? Just say we are. Let's just stick with that, and,
We continue to bring it up.
yeah, we're continuing to, have
This
conversations.
for a while, we're still working on it,
I think
Well,
they're,
with the city. It's-
They are facing some funding challenges, so it's not as high priority for them right now.
they're going after
It's a weird-
grants all over the place. but I don't
Right,
think
it's
they
a
have
10, the
anything
last,
this year.
last quarterly meeting we had on that project was 10, they're looking for $10 million in a climate of,
Yeah,
that is really tough to find that.
didn't they just balance their budget just last meeting? I think.
Well, I think the city's budget is somewhat balanced, but for this project, they don't have
Of
funding, they're
course,
gonna
yeah,
go
yeah.
out and try to find funding, for it.
Goodness.
And a couple of things that were under, if you saw me texting earlier in the meeting, there was a 2-alarm fire down at one of the other districts I work at, down in Parisima Hills, which is Los Altos Hills area, and wildfire, and it got contained. But, and I know it's in Kat's, report that we've been coordinating with the fire department and really building those relationships. So when fires do occur, we really need to be in the mix for the response, because we can turn on our pumps, make sure that there's fire in those hydrants. I'm sorry. Water in those hydrants. Let me step back. Water in those hydrants, and water in storage, right? And the irony of this whole thing tonight was that we had a meeting 2 weeks ago with the fire department. We've been having meetings with the Los Altos, fire department down there. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago and said, okay, when a fire happens, here's a line, please communicate with us, please let us know. And the last thing I said, I was walking out, I said, I don't want to hear about this on KCBS, like that.
Yeah.
And then driving over the bridge, I heard about it on KCBS, did not get any kind of notification. So we're gonna do a debrief afterwards, but I guess the lesson, there's always lessons learned, but best of plans always, you have to go through it and fine tune it and so forth. But it was just ironic that we talked about KCBS and I ended up hearing it on KCBS. But, so that's the report, and we'll have a lot more as the months go by, especially on the DLNO, because we're gonna start digging. We're actually gonna have some pipe in the ground. For the new board members, we always offer tours of the construction projects, and all board members, but as we start digging, it's pretty, at least for me, I mean, I'm
Pretty
excited,
exciting.
but it's
Pretty
pretty neat to
exciting.
kind of see, pipes being put in the ground and all the things that we talk about. We have the full protective gear, hard hat, vests and so forth. Don't just show up, though, just let us know a little bit ahead of time, and we'll make sure, that our inspector, we have a full-time inspector on site. Probably Michael will be there, and, when the tour occurs, but we'd love to show you, because that is where the rubber hits the road. That's where we're reinvesting all this money that we're collecting, reinvesting it for the ratepayers. So we would love to show you what that looks like. So,
I would love to see it.
Yeah, whenever
Yeah.
dates are available, just let us know.
yeah, once it gets going with actual big pipe,
What do
we'll let
you
you know.
You send the dates out or what?
Yeah.
Typically at the board meeting, we talk about it, like this coming month looks
Yeah.
really good, and then we work around your schedule, so.
Okay, great.
Sounds good, yeah.
Thank you.
You're not gonna start in all 4 places at the same time.
No, it's a 120-day, 130-day, not calendar day, working day, project, so it's pretty long-term. Because of how narrow the roads are, production rates are really low. Production rate is how many feet of pipe they can put in the ground. So it's gonna be a really slow project, so it'll be a while.
Right.
It'll be a while. And we're probably gonna hit the tail end of this rainy season also, so that may, depending on how that looks, there may be a delay there too. So, thank you.
Okay, administrative services. Also.
All right, so I'll just hit a couple of points. So the operations manager recruitment is actually coming to a close. So we have a signed conditional offer letter today. So the candidate will go through the background check screening, and then after they pass that, then we'll go into the final job offer. So the total cost for the recruitment has been just under around $3,700. I'd also like to touch base on everything that you guys have experienced, which is our new billing system with Express Bill Pay. I hope you guys didn't experience any issues transitioning over to that. So it was very unfortunate that the day that it was implemented, Express Bill Pay's internet system on their end was shut down. So our phones were very busy that day and the following day for customers trying to sign up. Today was another interesting day because we had about 1,000 residents that did not switch over to Express Bill Pay, so their bills did not get paid. So all those late fees will be waived and we are reaching out to them, or I shouldn't say we, Ron has reached out to the majority of them to get them going on Express Bill Pay, which is very fortunate that they have their own call center that we can forward all of our customers to help them sign up for their accounts online. We're fortunate for that.
I'm worried I might be one of those people.
Well, this is just your reminder.
I'll ask.
That's a good idea.
Picture.
Thank you. Thank you.
You skipping operations manager?
Yeah. Ops manager.
Oh, okay.
No, I got another word.
I'll just point out a couple of things, on page 268. I always like to show the USA location request, that bar chart there. There you go. So, because it's an indication of how busy the community is construction wise. And so, in May, we responded to 276 calls, and that was actually a high, compared to the last, 3 previous months. We started out really hot and heavy in January at 371, then just kind of tapered off, but now it's kind of picked up again. This current month, Tava Matele, who's one of our longtime employees, he's been out there doing the location requests, and I know Michael's been rotating his people through. So I think next month, who was we talking about next month is gonna be doing a location request.
I remember.
So, it's a Shane, yeah, so he's just letting the different people get out there doing it. It's a really good way for the operators or our people to get familiar with the system, right? Because you're going out there, you're looking at maps to find out where the water main's supposed to be, right? And you're verifying that, right? You're going out there marketing with blue paint so that whoever's doing work around there can see where our water line is. And so I think it's a really good way for our folks to get to see it. So I'm glad to see, in the past, we would typically just have maybe one person do it, and then they would get burned out and then we would have somebody else in there. But now it just kind of rotating through all the different people out there.
Tom, is it okay?
Oh, yeah, he's doing well. He enjoys it, actually.
That's
He was
good.
intimidated by it in the beginning, but once he
Yeah.
learned it, he actually enjoys it a lot.
Good. I mean, I cannot see him looking at maps and walking books and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Working in a ditch, yes.
yeah.
He's typically our concrete guy. He's pretty good with concrete, Tom is,
Yeah.
And then the last thing I was just gonna point out is on page 269, just at the bottom of it, you see that we had, and on the top of the next page, we had 3 leaks, 3 water main leaks, and then 1 pinhole in a pipe service. So, I mean, we still are experiencing leaks, but it just seems like, we're just not having as many, and I attribute it to, again, spending a lot of money, spending $20 million going after the really bad stuff in the last, 6-7 years. And continue to go after the really bad old pipes, because most of the times when we see the water leaks, they're old cast iron mains. So those water mains are 70, 80 years old, they've outlived their useful life, and it's just time to replace them, but we just, we can't get them all, but we've been focusing on the real bad ones, and so I think that's kind of
I
helpful.
wonder how complicated it would be to actually quantify that, how how much have we saved in probably based on previous history of water main breaks because we tried to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
A little bit, you know,
Yeah,
that would be something to look at.
How do you measure customer service?
Well, yeah, but this could be a number still, you know, based on previous history, based on performance of the mains, the way you did, maybe because we have all that information, you know, the leaks that we had and all that.
mm-hmm,
What we're gonna say is it's gonna be, we're gonna just say what it is. It's great. We say like, you know, maybe $25 million of water main breaks because of the bond.
yeah, at least that, right?
Yeah.
But those are the two things I was going to point out. I don't have anything other than, it's good to hear that Trevor passed on. The last few months, I've been pointing out, some staff, who've achieved the certification levels, and so this time I really didn't have anything to point out, but we just learned today that Trevor took his specialist test and passed, so now we've got a third backflow prevention,
Good.
specialist. Yeah, but it's pretty good for a district our size, I think.
A lot of districts don't have anyone
Yeah, they're
on
they're
staff,
looking-
they're looking at consultants and there's not enough consultants, so.
Yeah,
We're
they're gonna look for the backflow guy. He's out there.
Okay, thank you. Now, Kim.
All right. I've been pretty quiet this meeting, kind of nice. Nothing's good in my eye. So last week I went on the Hetch Hetchy tour. So that's a bus tour that, in this case, is hosted by Bosca and SFPUC. SFPUC basically runs these tours like bi-weekly every summer for a whole host of types of folks who have, some investment in the system. Investment or interest in the system. And so the joint Bosca ones are usually, geared towards primarily elected officials within the member agencies and appointed officials, so that you get out there and you really see the infrastructure and really feel the infrastructure. So next time they have signups, I'll be sending it around to everyone again.
We should have had some fairly new Bosca directors, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of city council
Bunch of new
members
ones, yeah.
from Mountain View to from Hillsborough. Blank Santa Clara, there was a staff member from Santa Clara, was actually an attorney from Hanson Bridget.
So these were council members who
CFO
are
from
not
Palo
part of the Bosca.
Some are
Or
on
some
Bosca and not all of them, but
Yeah.
Foster City. Or was there,
Because the one from Hillsborough probably is on Bosca.
Yeah, no, there-
Leslie,
yeah, so they were there and, like I said, they periodically do these, so.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
but it was great, so-
At the time,
Yeah. For a lot of the facilities, and really neat because when you go out to Hetch Hetchy, everyone has to leave the area at dusk. But because you're there staying in the cabins, you get to stay overnight. So you actually get to see the reservoir as the sun goes down and actually
It's beautiful.
late at night see the stars, so. that was
Absolutely.
major picture. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's that time of year to get the 2x2 with Belmont scheduled. So, if you recall, directors Bella and Cotton are signed up to do that. So think about your schedule. Let me know any vacations. It's always fun scheduling since it also has to schedule with the city council members and all of their staff that they involve. So it's gonna be a little effort. But let me know your availability and we'll get that on the
Yeah,
book
it's
soon.
usually August and September, so not usually goes for the council.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, we'll shoot for July and if it can happen, if not, we'll figure out what it can.
July, October, yeah, we'll shoot for July. Do you think it's gonna have enough time to get two of them in July? Well, maybe Kathy will,
Yeah, I mean, it depends. We don't do the scheduling for the council members, so, We'll see.
All right.
So that's coming, Folger Drive EOC, so we had the second planning commission meeting on June 3rd, and it was successful. The commissioners continue to be supportive of the project. They were happy with the switch and approved the conditional use permit. So there's a 10-day appeal period and that ended on June 13th, so conditional use permit is set, it is done. So now we're working with the on the building permit, and working through a few issues on that. So hopefully those will get resolved pretty soon. And we also have just engaged with O'Connor Construction Management, OCMI, to provide project management services, for that project. So we're starting with a relatively limited scope. They're gonna help us with doing the constructability review of the plans that we're doing now. Developing some specifications for the district related to the, vertical building. We have plenty of specs for the work we normally do, but nothing related to vertical construction. And then also doing a peer review of the cost estimates, that have been developed by the architects consultants. So our goal is to kind of, work with them, see how they work and perform, and ultimately expand the scope. So when we expand the scope, that'll be beyond, our signing authority, and that'll come to you guys for approval. That's the approach there. Supervisor David Canepa came and toured Dairy Lane. President Wheeler was there for the tour. I think it went very well. He was very engaged, very receptive. I mean, he spent quite a while with us.
Yeah, he spent almost 2 hours.
Wow.
We were trying to
2 hours?
It was over an hour.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Even longer than I remember.
And he just wanted to talk.
We talked about a lot of things. It was great. So he's very engaged. He's very supportive of what we're doing and what we want to do, and also the emergency planning topics that we brought up, as kind of, regional issues. So
Good.
it was
He was
very good.
supposed to be at the park Sunday and he never showed. 300 people kind of hanging around.
Oh,
He spent the time with the water district.
Yeah.
Glad he's
Doing
something.
Blame it on us.
He actually grew up with one of our old employees. Actually was better friends with his brother, but he knew the Piccolotti family.
Oh, the pixel, right, you mentioned that, yeah.
So he had a personal connection to the district too, so that was good. And Chris Michaelis was there too, so he helped with the tour. It was wonderful. Emergency planning, there's been a couple of things related. We did participate in the cities. Tabletop exercise they did. Had several staff. Michael was there as well as Dustin, our lead operator. The scenario that we did involved an airliner crashing into the hillside of Fox Elementary School. And oh yeah, what if that crash also hit a major PG&E gas line? So then there was a fire. So that was the scenario we worked through. They had this cool kind of sand table set up where you could see the fire progress and everything. So they hadn't done exercises like that in quite a while. So kind of everyone is getting used to how to do an exercise again. So it's pretty informal, but it was, I found it to be very productive and helpful. And just, spent time pretty much all day there and engaging with the other partner agencies. I mean, they had school district people there, they had fire folks there, they had people from search, the ham radio team. All kinds of folks involved, so it was very good. So they do plan to do those much more frequently, and we will continue to participate in those. And then the other thing we did is, I think I had mentioned how San Mateo Consolidated Fire had reached out to us. We met with their planner, Jim Yoke. They are working on updating new emergency operations plans for each of the cities that they serve. And so we had a meeting to talk about water issues related to those emergency operation plans. That included us, Foster City, Enid was there, Cal Water was there, City of San Mateo, even though they don't serve their own water, they were there as well. So it was a full conference room full of folks. Also, a kind of happenstance, when I went to Belmont Blooms, I was talking to the deputy fire marshal. And she didn't know the meeting was happening, and so she got herself in on the meeting, so it was good, it was very productive. We kind of strayed from just, okay, what's going in these plans, to a lot more just kind of broader planning topics, and kind of opened a lot of each other's eyes on things that we could do better and coordinate on. So, that we kind of all expressed interest in, maybe we should do these types of meetings periodically, just get, that group together. I think we talked about twice a year. And then of course, there'll be additional meetings related to the development of these plans. So that was very good, very, very productive, I think. Another thing that's coming soon, so, we are planning to engage the civil engineering firm Fryer and Loretta to prepare our risk and resilience assessment, that's due in 2026. So that's a required document. The last time we did it was in 2021 and staff developed it. So we had talked, so I initially met with, Fryer and Loretta to talk about doing the fire, risk assessment and kind of how to fire harden all of our infrastructure. And, you know, and kind of talking about all of that, it's like, well, why don't we just do the full RRA with a, you know, particular emphasis, go further on fire hardening. But let's do that all, and in talking with them and their experience doing this for other agencies, they've gone beyond and they've done a lot of work to understand SFPUC's operations under emergencies and different emergency situations and how that can impact our operations and just kind of go that step further. So, we decided to go ahead and go with that. And so they'll do the document, but they'll do kind of additional analysis. And there might be kind of a side memo or side report. And that, you know, they might identify capital projects that we'll want to do to kind of address, you know, any significant risks that we identify. So, that'll be a process. We'll work very closely with Jubin's team, as we develop that. So that's the plan. And then I know we're getting kind of late here. Want to just highlight, I won't go through them, but Aqua's been very busy with their advocacy. So there's a couple of coalition letters that we've signed on to. Those are attached at the end of my report. Also a summary of the high priority bills that Aqua's working in, you know, on in the legislature. So just, you know, it's very active. And then I think everything else is pretty routine. So if you have any questions about anything else in here, let me know.
There are a question. So, just related to the risk and resilience assessment, if there are contracts, with SFPUC, are they required to engage or report to us on risk assessments and how it could impact our water supply and what they may be doing for improvement?
I'd have to check, but I do not think so. I know there's been kind of more informal queries of them of, hey, why aren't you engaging us more? Let's involve us more. And there's been pushback on their side, or hey, that's not our purview. You guys are responsible your side, or, you know, so it's a challenge. But it is something that the new CEO of Bosca has an interest in, and he's brought it up, so we'll see what goes from there.
Any other questions? 9B, director's reports. Louis, do you have anything to report? Well, we have the agenda meeting.
Yeah. The agenda meeting, HIA,
Yes.
HIA. That's it, and then I was gone. So, but before, are you gonna be going to these two meetings in June and July?
Yes,
Okay.
the one next week is the GM Summit
Yeah,
and the leadership thing.
because we, if we're gonna do the 2x2 in July, we need to.
Yeah.
Okay,
Schedule around those.
all right,
Fortunately, yeah, the one next week is next week, and the other one is just 2 days,
okay. All right,
Thursday, Friday.
very good. Yeah, that's it for me. Thanks.
Sure. Nothing for me. I attended the, trying to think that much.
The HIA.
HI meeting, and that's it.
Julie?
Well, I'll add to Chuck's report, because you and I had a nice meeting
Oh,
with the new CEO of Bosca.
Yeah, Bosca.
We had an hour
Very informative.
introductory meeting. We went through the tier one and tier two plan changes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a good meeting. It was very informative.
Where did you have the meeting at his office?
No, we did Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah,
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 cool.
one evening earlier this month.
It was a good primer to start with this.
Yeah.
Because I would have just,
Extremely
I didn't
helpful.
realize how limited we are on time, and I thought I had a list of questions. I thought, okay, shut up and let him do his thing. And then he kind of finished pretty abruptly, so, but it was like, okay, this is coming. So we kind of have a preview of coming attractions.
Okay, cool. You know, everything that I did, we talked about, so
Right.
that always, yeah. Communications, do we have any outstanding communications? No. Good. Then I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, thank you.